For a few moments, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, preaching as the woman from the well, I want to preach from this thought: thirst trap. Thirst trap. Today I've come to tell you a story, my story, a story people have talked about for centuries, but have rarely understood, a story that has been preached in pulpits, debated by scholars, and whispered about in villages. But today I want to tell my story in my own voice, because no one knows the truth of my story better than I do. Let me begin with a confession, because confession, I hear they say, is good for the soul. I was thirsty. Not thirsty like you get on a hot day, not thirsty like when your mouth goes dry. If I'm honest, I was thirsty in ways that lived under my skin. What I mean is, my spirit was thirsty. My heart was thirsty. My identity was thirsty. Because I've lived to tell that there is a kind of thirst you cannot see on a person's face. It is deeper. It is quieter. It is older. And that kind of thirst, if you do not confront it, becomes a trap. I want you to hear me clearly. It wasn't just water I was seeking. I was thirsty for relief. I was seeking rest. I was in search of someone who would look at me and not just through me. Because this was about more than a reputation, more than a list of men, more than the pieces of my life that others used to shame. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. It was the heat of the day. It was strong. And there's just something about that Middle Eastern sun at noontime. It presses down on you. Sun so hot, it exposes everything. Dries out the skin, dries the land, even dries the spirit. And I had begun to feel just like the land around me, parched, cracked in places that I thought would hold my foundation. And if I'm being honest with you, I was barely holding it together. That's what dehydration feels like. It's not the absence of water, it's about the absence of nourishment. And I want to tell you something I did not understand until much later. You can be walking, you can be smiling, you can be working, you can be managing your life and still be dehydrated in your soul. Because dehydration sneaks up on you slowly. Your body tries to warn you. Your spirit tries to sound the alarm within you. But life has taught people like me how to ignore the warning signs. Life taught me to survive. Life taught me to push through. I think the language they use in the church today is press my way. Life taught me to keep going even when everything inside of me was screaming, stop. And then one day, dehydration became normal. An insufficient baseline. An insufficient baseline that I became used to as my new normal. Tolerant tolerant of dehydration. And I'm not just talking about being dehydrated from water. I've been dehydrated by disappointment, dehydrated by grief, dehydrated by rejection, dehydrated by the weight of expectation, dehydrated by relationships that drained me, dehydrated by men who consumed me for me but never poured into me, dehydrated by the loneliness of a woman who had lived too many lives before she was 30. Trauma had dehydrated me. Pain had dehydrated me. It was even the weight of pretending like I was okay when deep, deep down I was not. That's why I walked to the well at noon on that day. No one comes to the well at noon unless they have run out of options. Women draw water in the morning or in the evening when the sun was soft, the air gentle. Women walked together to provide a sense of belonging, but I did not belong. I didn't belong to them. I didn't belong to that town. Not even to those marriages did I find belonging. And if I'm being honest, when I was standing there at that well, I don't even know if I belonged to myself anymore. I went at noon because it was the only hour when I was pretty much guaranteed to see no one. I was hiding when I went at noon, but it was safer than exposure among the people who talk about me, whisper about me. When I went at noon, I avoided the loud whispers, the side eyes, and the judgment of others based on my personal choices that no one ever asked me about, but everybody had an opinion about. So I went to that well when I thought no one else would be there. And I didn't know that someone else was already there. And when I saw him, I admit I froze. A man at my well at this hour? And not just any man, a Jewish man, a rabbi, a stranger from people who despised me before he even knew my story. He looked at me with a look I had not seen in years. It was not desire. I was used to men looking at me for desire. But it wasn't disgust either. I was used to the people in town looking at me with disgust. And he wasn't even looking at me out of curiosity about why I was there at that time on that day, but he looked at me with recognition, as if I was not a distraction or a problem to solve, but a person worth speaking to. He said, "Give me a drink." I looked around because I thought he got to be talking to somebody else. Surely he doesn't mean me. Surely he was not talking to me, a Samaritan woman with a complicated past. You see, Jews don't speak to Samaritans. Men don't speak to unaccompanied women. And rabbis definitely don't engage with women like me. So I asked him, "You talking to me?" And he said, if I knew who he was, I would ask him for living water. Living water? What's that? Because I've heard about that Essentia. I heard about that smart water. And some people even like that tap Aquafina. But living water, what's that? I was so confused. But then I was intrigued, and it stirred something I have not felt in years. It stirred a hope. Then he went on to say, whoever drinks from this well I kept coming to would thirst again. I was like, duh, that's why we keep coming to the well. But then he said, whoever drinks the water he gives will never get thirsty. And when he said that, something inside of me broke and healed at the very same time. Because I knew what it was to thirst again. I knew what it was to work for water and for water to run out. I knew what it was to depend on things that satisfied nothing in the end. I knew what it was to cling to relationships that soothed temporarily but never healed my wounded heart. I knew the cycle. I knew it intimately. So I told him, sir, I want some of this water. Give me what will keep me from coming back to this well again. Provide me with what will keep me from repeating this cycle of having to come here every day. Give me what will fill what nothing else could fill. And then he said words that stopped me in my tracks. He said, all right, go call your husband. I cringed inside. Not because I wanted to lie, hear me, but because I had spent years learning to navigate these conversations where I've been ostracized for my choices. Remember, I had come to the well to separate myself. And so I said, I have no husband, because I had mastered how to answer the question without causing controversy. He said, you're right. You have 5 men call themselves husbands, and the one you living with right now, he not the one either. But he said it so differently. He said it softly. He said it kindly. He said it without accusation. He spoke truth without humiliation. He named my reality without shaming my humanity. He said it in the way a physician has to touch a wound and you feel the pressure, and though it's uncomfortable, you know that the pressure starts the healing process. And for the first time, I realized what Jesus was truly saying. He wasn't announcing my failures like everybody preaches. He was diagnosing my patterns of behavior. He was showing me that my life had been shaped not just by sin, but through the route of my thirst. People always want to talk about your sin, but we rarely probe more deeply around why. Why are you doing this? Not to judge you, but because I care. Why are you engaging in this? Why are you maintaining or even tolerating this kind of behavior? And the truth is, my thirst was out of control. Thirst had made me attach myself to men who looked like water. Thirst had made me tolerate the bare minimum from people. Thirst had made me accept whatever attention I could get. Thirst had made me settle for relationships that fed on my vulnerability. Thirst had made me cycle through the same profile of men over and over and over again. And when a soul is dehydrated, anything looks like hydration. When a heart is thirsty, anything looks like love. When identity is broken, anything looks like belonging. I did not choose those relationships because I was reckless. I chose them because I was thirsty. Now, before you get too comfortable judging me for the shape of my thirst, let me make something clear. My thirst just happened to be public. Your thirst just is private. My pattern happened to involve men. Yours might involve something no one else can see but God. But thirst wears many diagnoses. Some of you are thirsty for validation, so thirsty that you attach yourself to accomplishments that never let you rest. Some of you are so thirsty for approval that you keep bending your boundaries to keep people who do not deserve access to you. Some of you are so thirsty for control, so you hold on to relationships and responsibilities that are breaking your back and your bank. Some of you are thirsty for escape, so you run to substances or screens or shopping carts that numb you but never heal you. Some of you are thirsty for affirmation, so thirsty that you attach yourself to titles and positions that drain you of your joy. Some of you are so thirsty for peace that you stay silent in situations that are destroying your very spirit. Some of you are so thirsty for belonging, so you keep shrinking to fit in rooms God never asked you to enter. Some of you are thirsty for love, so you tolerate mistreatment that should have never had your attention in the first place. Some are so thirsty for the familiar, so you keep returning to cycles that feel safe but are always sabotaging your future. Thirst looks different for each of us, but thirst is the same. You do not choose the attachment. The thirst chose the attachment for you. So don't judge me for my thirst trap while pretending you do not have your own. My thirst was just visible. My thirst has been visible for 2,000 years. My thirst was made public. My thirst has caused folks to shame me from the pulpit. But your thirst might be silent. But thirst, baby, is still thirst. And so Jesus knew that the only way to break the cycle was not to shame me. The only way to break the cycle was to quench my thirst. And then I noticed something. I had been with 6 men. 6 marriages. Well, 5, but I was working on that last one. And we always, when we engage, we just kind of round up and say, my husband. But the truth is, 6 attempts at stability, 6 cycles of dependency, 6 patterns that ended the same way. 6 represents incompletion. 6 represents a striving. 6 represents cycles that keep spinning, but 7 is the number of completion. 7 is the number of wholeness. 7 is the number of divine intervention. So do the math with me. 5 marriages plus 1 who wasn't mine equals 6. But then Jesus was the 7th man standing in front of me. Jesus wasn't standing in front of me as a new lover, not as a man in the rotation, because I kept a roster. Not a replacement for the man at home that I still had to go back to. He stood as the one who ends the cycle. He stood as the one who interrupts the pattern of my choices. He stood as the one who breaks traps. He stood as the one who heals my thirst. He stood as the one who completes what pain left unfinished. Jesus, hear me, did not become my next attachment. This was tough for your pastor when we were talking about my sermon. Jesus did not become the next attachment. Instead, he restored the place in me that created the unhealthy attachment in the first place. He healed the thirst that had shaped my patterns of decisions, my choices. He quenched the emptiness that kept drawing the same kind of people to me. Let me say that again. He quenched the emptiness that kept attracting the same kind of people to the light I was carrying. Let me tell you something I know to be true. When Jesus heals your thirst, you stop craving what drains you. When Jesus restores your identity, you stop choosing from a place of emptiness and start choosing from a place of fullness. When Jesus fills your soul, you stop accepting the bare minimum from people. And when Jesus becomes your source, broken sources lose their appetizing appeal. In that very moment, my heart began to hydrate in ways I did not expect. The dryness, it lifted. The aches, they eased. The fog, it cleared. I felt something filling me that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with restoration. And then something happened on the inside. A decision, a shift, a release and a resolve, because there comes a point when the water starts to flow in that you can't do what you used to do. And so what I did was I left my water pot. The very thing that had brought me to the well was no longer necessary. That water pot represented my old way of living. It represented my isolation. It represented my old habits. It represented my old mindset, my old expectation that I had to work for my very own nourishment. The jar, the pot represented self-reliance built from dehydration. The pot represented self-reliance built from dehydration. The pot represented self-reliance built from my thirst. The jar, the pot represented my survival. But let me pause. Let me pause here because a preacher I recently heard talking about my story, like preachers do. Her name, the Reverend Tish Dixon Williams, she says, she used this term that I think y'all will understand since I'm coming from the first century. She says something powerful that I did not fully understand then, but she's right when I think about it now. When I look at my own story, she says, I got a pot issue. You're going to get that when you get home. I got a pot problem. Because the truth is that you cannot step into your new pattern while holding your old pot. Everyone has a pot problem. Turn to your neighbor and say, I see you got a pot problem. Turn to the other neighbor and say, what did they just say? A pot problem is whatever you carry when you do not trust that God will carry you. A pot problem is what you hold on to when the pattern feels safer than the promise. A pot problem is what you cling to when the familiar feels easier than freedom. I carried a literal pot to the well that day, but you likely brought your pot in here to church with you too. It may just be that no one can see it. Mine was made of clay, but yours is sitting tucked up nice and neat up under your chair. Some of you brought the pot of perfectionism, trying to do everything yourself because somewhere along the line you learned no one would show up for you. Some of you brought the pot of people pleasing, carrying other people's expectations while ignoring your own capacity. Some of you brought the pot of silence, staying quiet to keep the peace while your voice is drying on the inside. Some of you brought the pot of over-functioning, pouring out for everybody else and calling it love when in actuality it's depletion. Some of you brought the pot of scarcity, holding tightly to opportunities, relationships, and patterns that no longer serve you because you fear nothing better will come your way. Some of you brought the pot trauma, carrying memories and fears and old narratives you have outgrown but have not released. Some of you brought the pot of self-doubt, clutching an identity that is smaller than God ever created you to be. And some of you brought the pot of control, trying to manage everything in hopes of keeping your world from falling apart. You, baby, got a pot problem. And these pots are heavy. They are not only heavy, they are familiar. They are what you have known. They are what you have depended on. But here is the hard truth I learned that day. You cannot hold the pot and receive the water at the same time. I think your pastor says it like this: you can't pray the prayer and micromanage the outcome. You cannot cling to survival and step into healing. You cannot hold your pattern of destructive behavior and claim your purpose. You cannot keep carrying what kept you alive and expect to live free. A pattern-breaking cycle always demands that you leave something behind. Not as punishment. Hear me. Not as punishment, but as a sign, as proof that you are ready for what God is pouring. Leaving the pot of abandonment, it is alignment. Leaving the pot is not rejection of your past. It's making room for your future. Leaving the pot is not pretending the pain never existed. It's choosing not to let the pain define what comes next. I left my jar as my testimony. It was the evidence that the pattern had ended. It was the sign that thirst no longer controlled me. It was the act that said, I believe something new is beginning, and I'm willing to leave something behind as a sign of my faith. I left that jar, that pot behind because I finally met my source. And I ran back to that town that had rejected me. I ran back to the people who whispered about me. I ran into the streets with no shame, with no fear, with no hesitation. The woman who had hid from the community became the woman who called the community together. The woman who avoided their eyes, I never made eye contact, became the woman who could no longer be ignored. The woman who once lived in patterns became the woman who broke patterns. This is what hydrating does. It restores your voice. It strengthens your confidence. It returns you to yourself. It makes you bold and it sets you free. I said, come see a man. And of course, when I said, come see a man, their eyes got wide, but I didn't respond to it. I said, no, come see a man who told me everything I ever did, not everything I ever hid. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did and didn't judge me, didn't scold me. Because I've lived to tell, and let me say it again, that you gotta live to tell. You gotta live to tell. Because Jesus, my seventh man, saw it all and didn't walk away. He saw it all and did not call me unworthy. He saw it all and still called me into destiny. In fact, I became the first preacher about who he was because he didn't reject me. People believed because of my testimony, and later they believed because they met him for themselves. God used me. Me. The woman with unhealthy attachments. The woman with a pot problem. The woman that they said was ruined, cast aside, used goods. God used me. The woman that they disqualified is the woman God chose. The woman they said was too complicated to be called is in fact the one God said, I want to use her. God used me. Because this is not just my story. I suspect this is your story too. Some of you have been drinking from wells that been run dry. Some of you have been dehydrated by people who do not love you, let alone love you well. They tolerate you. Some of you have been trapped by patterns that look familiar but are harmful. Some of you have been settling for relationships that match your thirst but not your worth. Some of you have been hiding at noon because the whispers are just too loud. But the seventh man is here. That's what I came to tell you. The seventh man is here. The cycle is ending. The thirst is being healed. The pattern is being broken. The jar is being left behind. The voice is returning. The identity is rising. The hydration is happening. The celebration is near. You are not stuck. You're just thirsty. And the one who hydrates the soul is standing in front of you. I'm done. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Come see the one who heals the thirst that shaped my choices. Come see the one who completes what trauma left undone. Come see the one who breaks patterns with presence. Come and see Jesus. I am the woman at the well, but I am not the woman I used to be. My thirst has been quenched. My pattern has been broken. My purpose has been awakened. My voice has returned. And my story is a witness to what God can do when a soul finally receives living water. Let the church say amen.